My guest is Melanie D.G. Kaplan. Melanie's work has appeared in the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and National Parks Magazine. She's a former Knight Science Journalism Fellow at MIT, and her new book, Lab Dog, tells the story of Hammy, a beagle rescued from a research lab, and follows Melanie's journey to uncover what really happens to the thousands of dogs used in biomedical and consumer testing in the United States. Melanie, hello.
Hi, Ken.
Is it weird talking to me because we've had a pen palship for I looked and our first email was back in 2013. Is it? And I don't think we've ever heard each other talk or seen each other's faces or anything like that.
I don't think so. We definitely haven't seen each other. I couldn't remember if we talked or not, but certainly um, a lot of writing.
I looked at the archives and it's well over, it's got to be like close to 200 emails we passed back and forth. So it was, I was almost surprised to just see how thriving our pen palship was for a long time. But yeah, anyways, it's
I
nice to
love that.
finally
Well,
see
yeah,
you and hear you.
it's so nice. And I think, if I remember correctly, I probably reached out because just as a fan, right? And is that how it started?
I didn't know you were a fan, but I'll take that. Yeah, I just published my first piece in the New York Times about living in a van, which was my thing for a bit, and you sent a polite
Yes.
little note back and forth.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, a journalist, an old hand who's been doing this for a while. I could definitely use one of these. And like for the next 5 years, I'm like, do you know an editor at the Washington Post? Like that was basically what I was asking you all the time.
Well,
But no,
and
no.
yes, and then for the next 5 years, I'm like, what can I learn from him about writing a book? Because, I loved your first book, and it's just, yeah, it's been a really fun correspondence.
Cool, cool. Well, let's just get it right into it. Lab Dog, I loved it. I didn't finish the last two chapters, so maybe there's a cliffhanger or something there, but I got a really good sense of it. It's a wonderfully written and very important book. Um, I once started a podcast with this guest, Dan Flores, about a a non-human friend he had. He had a pet raven who lived around his property. And your book is about non-humans and our relationship with them and how we love them. I thought I'd start by just asking, what's the first non-human you kind of fell in love with?
Gosh, I had so many non-humans in my life as a child. I had these dachshunds. My parents brought one home from Germany when my dad was stationed there in the army. And I love the dachshunds, but I also spent a lot of time in my room. I was a good little introvert and spent a lot of time organizing my shelves and setting up my dolls and my stuffed animals. And I really loved them. It became this my own little world of make believe. And, I'd set up parties for them and bring them with me on trips, of course. And, I think I learned at a young age to try to just create some story. I wasn't a writer then, but, I had a very vivid imagination. And, bringing that into the story with Hammy was just such a joy, that part of the writing. I loved writing about him. I loved making him real for readers, and we had such a bond. I think that part just came easily to me.
You had such a bond. It almost seemed like love at first sight. Is that how you remember it? Because you were quite taken with him right away.
It wasn't love at first sight. In fact, I was trying to not love him at the beginning because, when you have a dog, at least in my world, my life ends up revolving around the dog. And I had started taking on some assignments. Like I went across the US by train, which was amazing. And I got some assignments for National Parks Magazine that, really needed to be dog free. And, you can't do a bird watching story with a dog next to you. And I'd gotten used to that, and it was really nice. So I had to think seriously about whether I wanted a dog in my life. So I was just fostering him at first, and then he also was just so scared of everything. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to get on the road and do stories, and I've got to go places, and he can't even leave the house. And it took probably close to a month before I really fell for him and realized that he had a lot of needs and just needed a lot of love and attention. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to rally. I am going to try to be that for this little creature.
That really comes through, this kind of maternal warmth you have for them. Is that something you've always had in you for the animals you've had, or is it just something about Hammy and his vulnerability? We should add that he was a lab dog for the first few years of his life, and the book revolves around that. But yeah, this maternal warmth is just this. Is that part of you?
I'm sure that is part of me, but his special needs really brought that out, and I'm sure made me a more patient person because he had come out of, like you said, several years of being in a lab, and whatever that environment was, maybe he was sharing a kennel with another beagle, maybe he was confined by himself, but whatever he experienced, he was not running around in fields and hearing city sounds and deciding where to sleep at night. And there were so many things that were not available to him. So, he comes into this world and everything is new, everything's a little scary. And it did bring out that part of me. I really wanted to take care of him.
Hmm. So you go on this journey and you're going like left and right into these centers and labs and talking with people who just are in the animal research field. What was that experience like for you? Because I can imagine it just being kind of nonstop misery and things that would induce depression, just being around this really hard subject. Or were you able to kind of detach a little bit from it?
I definitely detached a little bit. I think when I set out, I put on my journalist hat and I wanted to get answers to some of these questions, like why are we breeding dogs for research and testing, and what are they used for, and what have we learned from them in the past? And so I looked at this like this is my job. I need to do this. I'm a curious person, but I also need to find out because this is really kept in the dark. And I thought, I have this creature that I'm living with, and because of him, I've come to ask these questions, and I just owe it to the world to tell this story. And I just felt really strongly about I've got to get some answers. And one of the biggest challenges is that the research community, they talk about transparency, but they don't often talk. They don't talk to journalists on a regular basis because they're afraid, I think, what they say is going to be misinterpreted or misused. And there's just a history of them being harassed by animal activists. And so that was hard because I really had not done much controversial reporting before. I was used to kind of going out and everybody wants to talk to me, and they did not. So I was lucky to find a few dog researchers who were willing to talk, but in many cases, I never heard back. I had PR people say, no thanks, not interested. And time again, I was kind of shut down on that quest to talk to the research side.
And what do you kind of see Lab Dog as doing? Is there kind of new information, or have you just kind of found a niche here where you're just really focusing on lab dogs and beagles, or yeah, kind of what was the motivation there?
You mean new information in terms of
Just new
what?
reporting, something new to say about the issue, things like that.
I think what's unique about this is that there's a lot of books out there by animal activists and advocates, and then there's a lot of books on the academic side about animal research or um, laboratory veterinary care. But I believe this is the first book that really kind of goes down the middle and talks to both sides. And that was really important to me. I wanted this to be fair to both sides, to tell all of the stories, because you don't know the story unless you know both sides. And the people on the far sides who say it's black and white, I just feel like I can't trust that. It's not. There's so much nuance and there's so much gray area, and it's complicated because we've learned a lot from these animals. I mean, we were doing experiments on dogs 400 years ago, and the first successful blood transfusion came from dogs. So it's not like they've been useless, but more and more today, we have technologies that allow us to test things in a more effective and efficient way without using animals. And yet we still have this culture and system of experimenting on animals for biomedical research.
I'm impressed that you're able to kind of keep some focus on this gray zone between the black and white, because I know you have such a visceral emotional reaction to Hammy's situation and all the beagles and all the animals involved in lab research, which is just, terrible. But you do in the book kind of go into like what we've gotten from testing lab animals. Again, a terrible practice, but it happens for a reason. Like if you were to like just as a thought exercise, like steel man the animal lab animal research in favor of the researchers, what could we say? Like what have we gotten from animal research?
So, I mean, focusing on dogs, the big one is that we discovered insulin through dog experiments, and this was more than a century ago. And there was one particular dog that they mention. Her name was Marjorie, and it's so unusual that happens. That there's one big moment, and the researchers are running around and celebrating. And the way I understand how biomedical research works is that it's just these like very tiny steps along the way. So we don't say like, oh, dogs help us discover this one day, or and because of that, it's really hard to understand. It's hard for me to understand how this works because I'm not in a lab every day, and I don't understand a lot of the science. But we do learn from them for sure. Dogs have helped us, with research on sleep apnea and joint replacement and diabetes and cardiovascular. I mean, we share hundreds of diseases with dogs. And if we keep experimenting on them, we will probably learn something. So it's not like we learn nothing from them. The question is, could we do it in a better, more efficient way and a more ethical way? Because, I do believe if we are going to continue researching and testing on animals, there's got to be no other way to do it. And we need a much higher bar for, in terms of our moral responsibility. There's got to be, we've got to say, okay, they can't experience this level of harm, or we have to know there's going to be, a big win, a big benefit from this if we're going to do this to them.
Gotcha. And did this journey that you went on, did it kind of clarify your position on the issue, or, make you feel more strongly about something? Like, where do you kind of position yourself on animal lab research? Are you like in favor of like a wholesale ban against animals, or what?
I avoided saying that in the entire book, and I don't know, like, it's tough. It's, the more I learned, the more I realized how complicated it is. So I haven't come out and said, yes, we need to stop it immediately. I have many friends who say that, and the good news, as I'm not answering your question, is that this administration is talking about it more than previous administrations.
The Trump administration?
Yes, they are
Wow.
wanting to move away from animal research, and they're investing more in these alternatives. The FDA and the NIH have both come out and said this year. So that's exciting. And, I think the thing is so far, there's no transition plan. There's no, okay, here's how we're going to do this, because we can't just say tomorrow we're going to stop this. What do you do with the tens of millions of animals that are in labs in the US today? We've got to figure out what to do, and the research isn't going to just stop. So how are the scientists going to do the research if not with animals, or with fewer animals? So it's really complicated. I mean, would I like for there to be no animal research? Of course. I think, even people doing the research would say it would be great if we had another way to do this. But I think I'm going to leave it up to smarter minds to answer that question and let us know what's next.
I'm amazed by that. Well, I'm amazed by a couple things. Kind of this cruelty of animals and research on animals. It seems like something almost every American can kind of get behind, protesting or wanting to stop, because left or right, we all love dogs. So there's that. What else was I going to say? Oh, here's just my usual mind fog.
Well, and then also being surprised by this administration, is that?
Yeah, and being surprised by the administration, which I think
Yeah.
is a great thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's a completely bipartisan issue. I mean, there's the issue of the animals, which nobody wants to see animals hurt, right? And then also, this is taxpayer dollars for the most part, and people don't want to see their money going to this. But then, in the book, I talked to one mother whose son has muscular dystrophy, or people whose children have some, super rare disease, and they would do anything to give their kids, an extra couple of years or a chance of some cure, whether it means dogs or monkeys. And I don't have human children, and I still understand that that's a really tough place to be.
To be honest, when I started your book, I didn't even know there was still research happening on dogs. Do you get that a lot? Like, oh, we didn't even know like beagles were research subjects.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I first adopted Hammy, he had a tattoo in his ear, which they do at the breeding facility. So he was born in Virginia, in a place that bred, thousands of beagles. And at any given time, they had thousands of beagles there. And so I would show people the tattoo in his ear, and all I knew is that he came from a lab in Virginia. And people were shocked. And this happened time and time again for years. And one of my journalist friends even said, is that legal? And I knew it was legal, but I really didn't know any more than that. So that's when I really started thinking that I need to write about this.
Gotcha. And like something like with cosmetics, I was so pissed off when you started talking about like cosmetic testing on rabbits and stuff like that. And I was just like, cosmetics, they're not even necessary. We'd all survive without eyeshadow and lipstick. I certainly would, at least. And things like shampoo, it's just like, I'm guessing there's still some sort of testing for like new bath products and shampoo, but it's just like, we figured out shampoo probably hundreds of years ago. Like, why does this sort of stuff have to keep going? Do you have any other kind of like exasperation behind maybe unnecessary testing?
Yeah, well, so cosmetics is actually a really big win, because in the 80s, some of the big companies like Revlon, there was a big campaign against them doing these tests on rabbits. And they ended up putting a lot of money into the alternatives, the non animal alternatives. And most of the cosmetic testing is not on animals anymore. So that's a huge win. In some cases, there's a company that sells their product in China, or a company in South America, country in South America, where those those countries still require some animal testing. And
Mm.
so that's why not everything is cruelty free today. But you're right. I mean, this should be, all of these things should be cruelty free. There's no reason why we have to do this. Then you get into some personal care products that have a dual um, purpose, like you've got an anti-dandruff shampoo, or you've got a teeth whitening toothpaste. So if they're doing something else, then they also fall into the drug category, which
Mm.
requires a different set of tests. But I think the one that was most exasperating for me was pesticides, because the vast majority of pesticides are used in agriculture. So they're on the field, sprayed everywhere. But also just the bug spray that we buy, and the ant killer and the roach killer, and even antimicrobial wipes, because that kills microbes. So anything
Mm.
that kills is considered a pesticide. And today, dogs are still used for every pesticide test.
Oh man.
And they give them huge doses, and they euthanize them, and then they look at their tissues and organs, and even the flea and tick products that go on the dogs, they test them in the same way, and they put fleas and ticks on their bodies, and the whole thing was really upsetting. So I've completely stopped. I wasn't a big bug spray user to begin with, but I'm like, I don't care how much I'm itching, I will not buy a pesticide.
Yeah, has this book process changed you at all, or any other your habits? Like, are you like full vegan now, or anything?
I started eating plant-based exclusively at home shortly after I adopted Hammy. And that's been great. It's actually really easy to do now. I got all the right grains and good beans, and so that was a big change. But I think with the book, the other big change is around drugs. And again, never really a big user of over the counter drugs, but now I definitely think twice before I buy something, or even if I have a prescription filled. There's a little bit in the book about when I had this rash or some kind of bites, and I went to the dermatologist, and he peeled off 3 prescriptions. And one was pills, one was an ointment, one was a lotion, and I just took them home and shredded them. I'm like, I
Mm.
don't really need these. I'll let this thing run its course. And that one act, did that, is that going to save dogs? No, but it just feels like we all have choices like that, because I know people who get these prescriptions filled all the time, whether they need them or not, just to have them on hand. And you've got a cough syrup, but then there's a lemon flavored cough syrup or cherry flavored, and each new product is a new test. And these companies are in the business of selling the products and making money. But a lot of animals are still suffering because of it.
It's infuriating, especially when you go
Yeah.
into a pharmacy or a big grocery store and you just see like these walls of products, and so many tiny variations of each. And like, we can certainly imagine a much simpler pharmacy that maybe requires a lot less testing, and some of these poor animals, maybe their lives would have been easier. And
Yeah.
this is a depressing subject, and I wonder how much thought you gave to kind of people, reading 300 plus pages of a subject that kind of nobody really wants to spend that much time with. And I'm wondering how you thought about that in your book, and maybe how you structured the book to kind of keep people going through it.
Yeah, I thought about my mom a lot, because she's incredibly sensitive and squeamish and doesn't like to see, even a ladybug hurt. And, I think one of the big things is what I chose to leave out, because there's a certain amount I have to have in there so people understand what's happening. But I don't think there's anything gratuitous in there, and I certainly didn't go into a lot of detail that I could have. But the big thing is the story of Hammy, and I didn't know what this was going to look like when I started. I knew this was going to be about science, and I knew this was going to be about Hammy and me getting in the car and taking a road trip and meeting a bunch of people that work in this field. And, I think the way that I structured it is a reflection of the way that I went through the reporting process. Like, I'd spend a day going into a mouse lab and talking to scientists. And then, in the evening, I would cuddle up with him and, we would have our moments and just kind of sweet time together. And that was in some ways a palate cleanser for me and hopefully for the reader. And, I just wanted to keep reminding, I wanted to keep reminding readers that he was there, his story was progressing as my research was progressing. And, I hope that they can fall in love with him as much as I did.
The reader falls in love with Hammy too, and that very much. It's a brilliantly structured book. That's why I asked that question. And
Thank you.
I wrote a book on climate change, and just like that's another subject that even someone interested in climate change like myself, I don't want to read a whole book about that just because it's so depressing. So I had to ask myself, how can you write something that someone will want to read and kind of bring them into this important subject? And I think you've done that, and I liked how you kind of gotten into the philosophy and ethics, and you talk about Peter Singer's animal liberation. Did you enjoy that process, kind of looking at kind of the moral philosophy? Did you learn anything from it?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I had not read Animal Liberation before, and you talk to a lot of animal activists, and it's the book that they read decades ago that kind of set them off on their path. So it was really interesting to read his work and talk to some other ethicists. And I mean, these are the people who are grappling every day with these really difficult choices. And just the framework of how we look at this. Can we use animals and the harm benefit analysis? And I'm glad there's people out there looking at these things, because it's just it's mind boggling. But to think about someone doing this for their career, it's I really admire them. These are very tough questions.
And unfortunately, Hammy passes away. Sorry about that. When was that, by the way?
Thank you. It was October 2023. So we just had the 2-year mark, and yeah, it's been nice thinking about our time together, and just feels like a gift that I can keep talking about his story. But I do miss him so much.
Yeah, I bet. And anniversaries of bad things are tough times as well.
Yeah.
Are you in love with any other non-human right now?
I've been doing some book readings around the DC area, and I'm lining up beagles. So beagles either that were used in research and then adopted, or that were released from the Envigo breeding facility a couple years ago when those 4,000 beagles got out. And so there was a reading in Alexandria, Virginia the other day, and I had 5 beagles there, and one of them was just this little tiny thing, and I just I just held her and did not want to let go. So maybe I loved her just a little bit.
What's with you and beagles? You got to talk to beagles.
I think they just have really big personalities. They're super sweet, and growing up with those dachshunds, I think that they're in the same family, right? They're all hounds. They have these great noses and big floppy soft ears, and they're small enough to pick up. And the thing is, a lot of the things that make them an awesome pet is those are the same reasons they ended up using them in the lab, or one of the reasons, because they're just they're very happy to do things, and pleasing. And so anyway, we'll see.
Are you a beagle, or is that your spirit animal? Is that how you describe yourself?
I was just talking to somebody about my spirit animal the other day, because somebody sent me a mole, and so I need to do a little bit more investigating to see who my spirit animal is. But yeah, beagles are pretty awesome.
Can I tell you about some of the non-humans I've fallen in love with?
Please.
Um, the first I want to mention is Howard. Um, Howard was a duck. Uh, and I just moved to New York State from Canada. So this kind of suburban community was still very muddy and had yet to be built upon. So there was like ponds and stuff where there would soon be houses. And there was this duck that never flew. I think it was a mallard duck, and it would just hang around our house, and it would sleep right next to our basement window. There was like a little window into the basement, so we would just see its like feathers just like smushed up against this window. And I must have been 6 years old, I'd say. We'd leave breadcrumbs, and it would I'd have to go on like this long walk to get to the bus stop for school, and it would follow me all the way to this bus stop, like a quarter of a mile. And I remember one day, again, I was in like first grade. My dad picked me up from school, which was always a treat. But I'm like, Dad, why are you picking up me from school? He's like, I got bad news. Howard got run over by a garbage truck, and I think I was so young I couldn't even process it. But I remember it as a warm memory because my father was just being so attentive to some of my potential emotional needs there.
Oh,
You know,
oh my gosh.
so that's
That's
Howard.
really sad.
There was this really creepy duck movie called Howard the Duck. I don't know if you remember that in the late 1980s. I shouldn't have been watching that when I was 6, but I'd already watched it. I think there's actually like a pornographic scene between ducks in the movie.
Oh
So
God.
my parents were
Different,
not
different Howard.
my parents were not regulating my movie consumption well. And then I think they recognized just like how much me and my brother loved animals. So we got a golden retriever, I'd say when I was 7 years old, and his name was Buster. And he was just an amazing dog. Never gave anybody trouble. So happy and friendly. And he lived for about 10 years. So I got, and now my daughter, she's 6, so she's asking for her first dog. So animals are very much on my brain.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Have you read How to Be a Good Creature by Cy Montgomery?
No, what's that?
Oh, it's a lovely book. She kind of goes through some of the non-human animals that she's had relationships with and loved over the years. And, I mean, she's written about octopuses and turtles, and she's just a wonderful friend to animals. And her writing is really beautiful.
Have you had a relationship with an animal that wasn't a dog that was meaningful in some way?
Oh, good question. I've had moments. I've never lived with an animal that wasn't a dog, except for when I was a child. My mom did some early education, and she would bring home like ducks, and we'd have little creatures in the house. But I think like in the book, I go to visit Kindness Ranch, which is a sanctuary in Wyoming for former research or testing animals, and remember there was a pair of llamas there, and I spent a little time with them, and just got really close, like so close I could feel the little fur on this llama's like upper lip,
Mm.
and looking at each other in the eye, and there's been a number of times like that where I feel like there's a connection, and we see each other, and that feels so special to me.
What about kind of on your travels and in the wild and all of that? Because I know you've been back and forth across the country many times. Maybe you don't have a relationship, but have you ever had a notable moment with an animal out there that kind of sticks out? I'll share one of mine while you think.
Yeah.
When I was living up in Arctic Alaska, this I would say is my most kind of strange and remarkable moment with a wild animal. I was walking on this trail with my girlfriend at the time, just outside of the Coldfoot camp in Arctic Alaska, And in the summer, you're just swarmed with mosquitoes. Like there's hundreds, sometimes thousands of mosquitoes around you. And I was wearing shorts, and my legs were just covered in mosquitoes. And eventually, you just stop to you don't even think about them anymore. Anyways, we were walking along this trail, and this little baby ptarmigan, like kind of like a grouse bird, just kind of ran out into the trail. It must have just been like a week or a couple weeks old, and it just went right up to my foot and was just kind of like squawking its mouth, kind of opening it up. It must have been like lost its mom or terrified, because it's coming up to like this large animal for help, which just amazed me. And I remember my girlfriend, she's kind of rolled her hand down my calf and just picked up this big ball of mosquito carcasses, because I'd been slapping them and killing them, and and rolled it up into a ball and fed it into the baby ptarmigan's mouth. And maybe we should have taken it home or something, but we didn't even live there. Anyways, it was just a remarkable moment I had with a wild
Oh,
animal.
wow, I love that. Well, and I'm also really glad that you didn't befriend the mosquitoes, because when you started telling the story,
I've got a pet mosquito, actually. I keep it in a little cage.
yeah, that is one creature in the animal kingdom I'm, yeah, not a fan of. I did a lot of my writing down in rural Virginia at a friend's cottage, and I was just so lucky to have this quiet space. And many times it was just Hammy and me down there, and lots of open space right on the river. And it was so fun to see the animals come out every spring. There was a groundhog that lived under the shed, and there was geese with goslings who would, kind of trot across the yard down to the water for their first swim lesson. And I'd see a couple otters, and the herons would always poop on the dock. And it was so alive with animals. And even more have come out now since he's not there. I'm assuming they smelled him before, but always lots of little bunnies, and the occasional snake. So I worried for the bunnies,
Mm.
for good reason. But yeah, I mean, that's just been a really happy place for me down there.
So are you happy that you're done with this book and you can kind of put it in the past now?
I'm happy that I'm done with it. It still feels so surreal to have it out and to have something I can hold. It's just so exciting. And I don't think it'll be in the past anytime soon. I'm going to talk about it and hopefully do some traveling next year. And I still want to share about this topic and about Hammy as much as I can. I wrote this to share his story and get the word out about something that is really in the shadows. And it just feels like a good time to keep talking about it now.
Yeah, so I should have asked, like, what is it like to be an author? Because you've been a freelance journalist for what, like 20 years or something now, and finally have a book. What is it like to go from journalist to author?
It's, oh, it just makes me so happy. I've been wanting this for a long time. As you know, I took a great book seminar at Columbia Journalism School more than 20 years ago, and we all had to put together a book proposal. And so I came out of there feeling like, okay, I know how to do this. But as you know, you've got to have the right idea and something that you're so passionate about. You can, eat, breathe, sleep it for years. And this was definitely the right topic. Um, I just dove into it and even though I had this book proposal background in my memory, um, it's just such a different beast. I mean, my articles before were maybe 7,000 words tops, and this
Hmm.
is well north of 100,000. And so just structuring that and kind of keeping the reader in mind so they don't lose interest. There's all sorts of things I had to think about, but I had a great editor, and yeah, it feels very exciting to be an author now.
Hmm. So you're an author. Do you see more books, or are you gonna kind of go back to doing some freelance work. And by the way, you must be in like the top 1% of people who've kind of survived the industry for as long as you have, and have been doing it for this long. Like, I'm always right on the edge of being like, I'm done with this because I'm sick of the roller coaster ride and the crappy pay. But how have you
Yeah.
managed to keep it going for so long?
Yeah. I don't know if the crappy pay will ever go away, unfortunately.
No.
I've balanced a lot of the fun writing, like the travel writing. Um, I wrote more than 100 travel articles for the Washington Post. And I don't know if those days are over, but I keep hearing that they don't have any budget for freelancers. So we'll see about that. But it was a matter of balancing that plus things that paid well that weren't necessarily my passion. So that could be a trade magazine. I've done some, writing for companies. I am happy to do any kind of writing because, as you know, it's hard just to say, okay, I'm only going to do this very specific type of writing and make a living.
I just signed up for a $500 copy editing job for kind of an amateur memoir memoir writer, and I'm very happy to have any little bit of pay come in. But that's kind of the state of
That's
my
great.
career. It's
Yeah,
not
no,
great.
actually, that reminds me. I did some proofreading several years ago. It was just the driest white paper ever, and then there were hundreds of footnotes I had to proofread to make sure the periods were in the right place. But it paid well.
Yeah, and a lot of this kind of proofreading, copy editing. I mean, AI can make a lot of people's brains obsolete, I think. So yeah, there's that. One of the things we always talked about in our email correspondence was just kind of little successes we had. I just landed a piece in Adventure Journal. Have you haven't written for them yet, have you?
I have not.
Yeah, I'm
Congratulations.
doing. Thank you. I'm going to be doing my Montana American Prairie article
Oh,
for
good.
them. So thank
Oh, I'm
goodness
so
for
glad.
that.
I really can't wait to read this.
Yeah, I'm so happy that that's happening. What else should we talk about? Um,
Oh, I didn't answer your question about what's next in terms of writing. So I I feel like now that I've been through the book process once, you learn so much. It's almost like you have to do it again or try to do it again because I mean, the learning curve is just insane on the first one. You just don't understand like how publishing works and how you put this together. And so it would definitely be interesting to go through it a second time. But I also will pick up and already am picking up some freelance pieces just because, got to buy groceries.
and you are a full time writer, right? Because like me, I'm going back to school. I'm in grad school for psychotherapy and counseling to kind of have like a somewhat lucrative side career. But you're full time, no?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. For many years, I had a little side hustle. Like I worked at the neighborhood used bookstore. I taught swimming lessons. And that was just as much to get me off the computer for a while as to, make some extra money. Um, so yeah, we'll see. I mean, writing a book feels like just a big milestone and who knows how that will change things.
Hmm. Um, I just, man, my mind fog today is just terrible. I get these questions and then they're just like gone. Oh, I wanted to ask about travel writing and kind of writing influences for a science book like this. Do you kind of have like a model that you were thinking of, like someone who you think does kind of science research, travel really well? And same thing with your kind of your journal, your freelance journalism career. Do you have some favorite kind of travel writers who've inspired you along the way?
I don't read a lot of other travel writers deliberately because I think for a long time I just wanted to figure out what my own voice was. Um, certainly in preparing for this book, I was trying to figure out what it was going to look like. And I read, I'm going to blank on this book. It's, I think it's Traveling with Einstein, and the author's name's escaping me, but it was travel, and it was quirky, and it was sciency and history, and I loved it. And I think I didn't find anything exactly like what I wanted to do, but I certainly used my experience with all the travel writing before, just to say, okay, I can do this and tell my story in the first person, which is a little bit non-conventional for the science. I think just having that personal story in there is part of just what helps people be able to get through this.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, it's like a really hard subject, but you do it with such tact and even little bits of love and humor, and it just kind of carries you through. And I'm just so grateful that you did the book because, like I said, it's just like, are we still working on dogs? Like, it's so easy to kind of just completely forget about what's happening behind the scenes, and then you look in your house at all these products and shampoos and everything, and you just realize there's just almost so many sacrifices that have been um, uh, um, sacrificed along the way. I am like, while I was reading it, I was like, should we have like a memorial for all the animals who've died and who have served us in any way? Did you have any thoughts like that on your journey?
That's interesting. I like that idea. There are some labs that do things internally, and there's also a monument somewhere. I want to say it's in Moscow, but some of the labs will have photos, or they'll have a scrapbook, or they'll say something to memorialize these animals. But we certainly could do a better job. I mean, even in scientific papers, it's been suggested that, we say more about the animals. Maybe we include their names. We thank them, which is not a common practice. So there's a lot more we could do to bring attention to them, and to show our appreciation, and that this really is a sacrifice. They're not just commodities.
I didn't think the Russians and the Trump administration were going to be the most pro animal people out there. So this is
We
all
will see.
um, cool. So I usually ask some guests kind of like what they're consuming out there or what they're really enjoying, everything from like a book, a movie, to some fishing tackle or whatever.
Mm.
So what would you like to talk about?
Well, for a long time, I just was not reading anything unless it was connected to the book. So it just feels good. So nice to have some pleasure reading on my nightstand. Um, and one book that I'm reading along with some others is Outlive by Peter Attia, which, I've been really listening to his podcast pretty religiously for years. And it just reminds me what I need to do for my health, and how I need to keep working out even harder as I age, and take care of my bones and muscles, and all the good things about diet.
So
So
is he kind of like an Andrew Huberman who talks about like the science of well-being and all that?
he does talk a lot about that. And at the beginning, it was really overwhelming. It went right over my head. But the more I listen, the more I'm kind of understanding what he's getting at. And his book is pretty accessible. So
So
yeah, it's definitely.
what's like a couple like health tips you can share, like things that you've changed because of Outlive?
I'm getting more labs for my cholesterol. So I
Mm.
have high cholesterol, and I think it's hereditary, but the basic labs they do with the doctor only tell you so much. So there's extra tests you can do, and there's a couple that he really recommends. and trying to get more protein in my diet because I do exercise a lot, and I'm trying to do more strength training for my bones. Um, and yeah, just kind of get into better routines. I think with the book writing, I tried to do something every day, but there were some weeks before deadlines, it was just a nightmare. And it's like I got up in my pajamas and started writing and, didn't move except to grab a bite all day. So,
What? Anything else? Anything else you're consuming?
well, I am a big fan of slow horses.
Slow Horses. Oh, the British one with Gary Oldman.
Yes,
Yeah. What
yes.
season are they on now? Are they up to three?
So season 5 came out.
Ah,
I love Gary Oldman. I've been a fan since his True Romance days in the early 90s, and he is just fantastic in this. So, and I just found out it's based on a book, so I think I might have to pick that up.
gotcha. So that's your kind of go-to TV series?
Well, I finished season 5, so now I need another one. What do you recommend?
Okay. Well, I just watched a Netflix documentary called The Perfect Neighbor. Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
It's the first ever, that I know of, documentary created just using police body cam footage, and it's very interestingly and well kind of knitted together. And it's just the story of this perfect neighbor who was anything but. And it's kind of like this poor, mostly African American community in Florida, where there's like this one white lady who kind of posts no trespassing signs kind of all over her little property, and just freaks out anytime a kid is playing football anywhere near. And just something terrible happens, and it's a little bit about the aftermath of that. So it kind of says, I think, something about America, just kind of like the state of our communities and neighborhoods, and kind of how one person and some outmoded notions of privacy and no trespassing can kind of ruin things for a lot of people. So that was really good. I'm also preparing for the second season of Wolf Hall. Did you watch that?
I have not
Oh my
yet.
goodness. Yeah, that's
Good.
it's a BBC series based on Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall
Yeah.
books about Thomas Cromwell and Henry the Seventh or Eighth. I always forget which one it is, and I just rewatched first series, just preparing for season 2, and
Oh my
that's
gosh. And
terrific.
pretty much anything BBC, I feel like is going to be good. Or anything British. Did you see the Detectorists about the
No.
metal detectors? Oh, you got to watch that. I've seen that a couple times now.
Pen pal ships. Is this something you have with a whole bunch of other people? Was I just one of many? Should I be jealous of the all the others that you have?
You are not one of many. You are singular, but I do have people that I correspond with, and one is a man who's almost mid 90s who wrote to me after one of my Washington Post articles came out, and we corresponded for a long time. And then he had me over for dinner, and I met his grandson, and I brought my ukulele, and we all played instruments together, and
Oh,
we've just
wow.
become dear friends. He calls me his honorary granddaughter. And I do have a friend in the UK, and we write snail mail letters to each other, which is just so lovely. And she sends me little stickers, and I get so excited when I get something in the mail. So, yeah, I'm a pretty good pen pal. I think that is something I've been doing since I could write. I love writing letters, and I love receiving them.
If you could have a
But
pen pal ship with someone living or dead, um, who might it be? Who might you like to correspond with?
oh, um, I mean, I have to say Jane Goodall because, she said many times that dogs were her favorite animal, and she's got this great story about her dog Rusty when she was growing up, and that's when she learned that animals had personalities and fears and all the sentience that we know now. Um, but oh my gosh, just what a lovely human, and I feel like we could all learn so much more from her than we already have. And I'm just glad that she lived to such an old age and could give the world what she did.
And she blurbed your book too. My
Yes,
goodness.
I know.
That was probably
I
her last blurb.
Oh, yeah, I'm still pinching myself.
Wow. Yeah, that's like the not daddy, grandmama of possible blurbers is Jane Goodall. I was like, wow, Melanie, good job getting that one. So what's next? What's next for? I know you're probably going to be promoting this book for a while, but any other articles or trips or anything else lined up for you?
I've got a couple articles I'm pitching to National Parks Magazine, and I always love writing for them, although the parks are closed now, I think a lot of them. So we will see how long that's going to last. It's been interesting just driving around DC, some of these small parks like Roosevelt Island, where I used to love to walk Hammy. I went there the other day just to kind of, do a quick hike in the middle of the day, and that's blocked off. So,
Oh no.
there's no buildings or really infrastructure, but you can't even pull into the parking lot. Um, so yeah, this government shutdown is affecting so many, of course. I guess the animals in the parks are probably really happy. They're like, thank God, no humans.
Can I entice you to say anything political about the shutdowns and all of that? I guess there's not much to say about it other than it's unfortunate and ridiculous that this happens every few years.
Yeah. Well, I was reaching out for an article to a White House spokesperson, and I got an auto reply, something about the shutdown, and it said, well, as a reminder, if the Democrats had only blah blah blah,
Mm.
we wouldn't
Oh,
be
give me a
here.
break.
So
I mean, they run what? The executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial. They have nobody to blame but themselves, right? For the budget crisis.
yeah, no, it's a mess. I try to stay out of that.
There's I'm in the United Kingdom. I've been here for 7 or 8 years now. And I feel like there's like a 5,000 mile buffer between me and the States. So I read the news, but I don't really feel the news. And I think depending on who I talk to in the US, I just get varying degrees of um I don't know, just intensity of feeling about kind of where the country is headed. You kind of pick up on this kind of doomer, perhaps appropriate doomer tone. We're like, we're heading to fascism or authoritarianism. It's a shit show over here. But yet when I visit, it's always the same America. It's just like people are nice in the grocery stores or in line at the post office. There's nothing happening in my old suburban Buffalo, New York neighborhood. It's always the same. So it's just like, what is America? Is America the one that we feel in the grocery store? Is America the one that we kind of experience online and through the media? And I'm wondering what you think of all that, and if you have kind of a general feeling about, I don't know, where the country's going.
Well, I think we all spend way too much online, and not knowing what we're seeing in social media, if it's AI generated, and we do have to question that more and more. And what's in our news feeds, it's really scary to me. And it's scary, I think, the number of people that are relying on that for their news. And um, I think I'm probably feeling particularly optimistic because just this morning, I listened to Mark Maron's last podcast with President Obama, and he sounded very optimistic. Even through this shakeup, we will all survive, and we are going to come together in this experiment that is America, with people of all colors and nationalities, and that we will have tolerance for each other, and we need to just remember what we're made of, and who we are, and that I think it does come back to the kind people in the grocery store and the post office, and on a one-to-one level, people are still good and kind, and I believe President Obama that we will get through this and we'll be better.
I think I feel the same way, and I think being in the UK and looking at America from 5,000 miles away, it can kind of help perspective sometimes, because I think if you're right in the middle of it, your perspective might be skewed a little bit. And, when you just kind of look at what America is shaping up to be on like a century long level, it's just like, I think we're going to be okay. I think we're going to outlast whatever is happening. In my 42-year-old life, since I achieved political consciousness, which is around the age of 18, 19, I've seen this kind of like a constant swing back and forth from, W. Bush to Obama and to Trump and to Biden. And it's just like, isn't that what's to be expected? Like, can't we all imagine that there's going to be another swing back?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. Um, yeah, it is interesting having that perspective from another country. I spent a month in Canada this summer and was just not worried, but wondering how people were going to feel about an American coming in, because they're certainly not coming here.
Mm-hmm.
And Canada has a reason to be upset with the U.S. and everybody was welcoming, and it's funny, they call their Americanos now Canadianos.
Mm.
So there's a lot of Canadian pride, and Canadian businesses are boasting about that, and so yeah, it will be interesting. I think you've got to take kind of the long look, and this is just another piece of history. So hopefully, the people who are really struggling now will make it through, and we will see whatever the next chapter is.
Yeah. A Canadiano, by the way, has 1/4 maple syrup in it. About that.
Well, then I
Yeah.
would probably like it.
When I was up in northern Montana this past summer, one of the first person I got to speak to was just this guy in a truck who just pulled over to see a couple random hikers out there, and he's like, "This country's going down the shitter," and I was just like, it's like this could be construed in multiple different ways. It's just like, which shit are you talking about? And he's just like, this Trump, he's ruining the country. If he invades Canada, I'm going up to Canada and fighting for the Canadians. And that's not what I was expecting in rural Montana at all. And that was like the
Right.
first and only political discussion I had
Interesting.
in 3 weeks. So yeah, a little surprise. I'm sure you get those little surprises on your road trips too, where
Yeah.
kind of
Well, yeah, I love.
stereotypes and
Yeah, just hearing you talk about that's making me feel a little itchy to take a road trip, because just getting out there to this land that you're not familiar with and talking to strangers and hearing their perspectives, it's just that so feeds me. And so hearing you say that just makes me want to get in the car and go somewhere, because people are all just so interesting. Everyone's got their own story.
And you have yours, and you've done it so well with you and Hammy in the book. So yeah, everyone go out and buy Lab Dog. So Melanie, it's been a real delight to finally see you 12, is it 12? Yeah, 12 years after our pen palship started. So yeah, thanks so much.
Ken, thank you. This has really been a treat. I love talking to you.
Okay, till next time.
Okay.